Hey, how you doing? Today we're joined here together to talk about our team project for our developing management and team building skills class for Professor Flores. Um, we're talking today about leadership. Leadership is our topic. Um, so we're here to record our podcast, see how it goes, have a good time, and then guess we'll get started. So my name is Ryan Hunt.
My name is Mackenzie Hopkins.
I'm Ryan Keelty.
So the first thing we'll get into is a little bit about ourselves. So my name, like I said, my name is Ryan Hunt. I'm 21 years old, senior here at Towson University on the Tune campus. A little bit about myself. I'm from Harford County, or I was born in Frederick, Maryland, but I'm from Harford County, Maryland, born and raised here since I was about 2 years old. I live at home with my parents, my mom and my dad, my sister. I have a dog, Cooper. Some hobbies of mine. I enjoy playing, coaching, and watching sports. I played sports throughout my whole life, and now I guess you say I'm in retirement. So I coach sports now, but I'm also very involved in watching sports. I watch football, basketball, and baseball almost every night, whether it's on the TV. But a couple other hobbies of mine. I love spending time with family and friends, working out, exercising, and listening to music. So that's just a little bit about me.
Cool. So a little bit about me is I'm also 21. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and I live in Baltimore County. So I've lived in Kingsville my whole life. Haven't gone very far. But I live with my mom, my dad, my grandmother, and my sister just moved out a few months ago. And I have one dog and a tortoise, and I went to school in Bel Air. I went to John Carroll for high school, and now I'm at Towson. I went to Hartford before this. A few hobbies of mine are anything athletic. I really like different sports casually. I'm not like hardcore into anything, but I like working out, going to the gym. I do club gymnastics with Towson. I love that. I like horseback riding, swimming, yoga, stuff of that nature. Anything, speaking of nature, I love hiking. So that's another hobby of mine. And
Yeah. So my name's Ryan, and I'm 38 years old, older than most people, most students anyway. I have a wife and 4 children. The age ranges are 18, 14, 11, and 4. It's pretty widespread. I'm a retired Marine. I joined in 04 and retired in 2019. I enjoy sports. I played sports in high school. I played football, baseball most of my life, and then I did play lacrosse for a year. And I have hobbies, but most of my time is pretty much just spending time with my wife and kids and all their extracurricular activities. It keeps me very busy. But I do like muscle cars and all kinds of cars. I know how to do a thing or two. Enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be good and get paid for it. I can tear stuff up. I did go to Harvard Tech, so I grew up here. I moved to Bel Air when I was about 13, 14. Went to Harvard Tech for carpentry, and I did that for a couple of years before I joined the Marine Corps. And I always like doing that too. Again, not good enough to get paid, just good enough to mess things up. And what else? I'm in my senior year as well. We're all in the same program at Towson. Everyone has different aspirations and goals they want to do with their life. And I'm lucky enough to have already completed a career, and then I wanted to match my experience in the military with a degree and hopefully be more marketable in the civilian world. Yeah.
So today we'll discuss numerous topics of stuff that we want to cover, some stuff that we were given to cover throughout our topic. So first we'll start off with diversity. We'll get in a little bit into it in a little bit about what it means to us, but first we'll start off how our diversity is different between the 3 of us. So one thing we already talked about is obviously me and Mackenzie are the same age, same generation, and then we have Ryan, who's a little bit older than us, different generation. But one thing I think is pretty cool, right, is so Ryan is from the same high school, same program that I was in, very involved in some of the same sports, but
Yeah.
we're involved. We're there. There's a pretty large age gap in between the two, so I just think that's pretty cool. So I graduated class of 2020. Played football, basketball, and baseball at Harvard Tech. I was in the carpentry program, and obviously I don't. What year you graduate?
I graduated in 03.
03. Yeah.
So it's really interesting if you talk about diversity. Like there's an age gap and difference here, a generational gap for sure. Like clearly we're all the same race. We have different gender here, right? But in being together and knowing that we're different in different aspects that we can find through conversation and getting to know each other, that there is similarities and there's things that we can relate to, such as going to the same school, playing the same type of sports, and you can only figure that out if you start asking questions and getting to know people. And then me and Mackenzie had a chance to work on a couple different class projects, plenty of times actually. I feel bad for her.
No, you're good at work.
We talked about that many times. But in doing that, I got to know a lot about her and the things that she's interested in. And one thing I think early on when we were having a conversation just outside of class, she's interested in horses and she rides. And at the time, my daughters were also interested. And so we kind of connected over just horseback riding, which was really cool. And then, further on conversation. So it just shows you that even though people are different and diversity is important, and that you still can find a way to connect with people even though if they're different than you, and it also brings different opinions, different ways of going about things together, so you can work together well on a team.
Yeah. I think it's also cool. Like we all seem to be extroverts in a way. We all don't have an issue speaking with each other, which makes things very fun when we're like working in group projects.
It's a lot easier to work together when there's not like the awkwardness of not knowing what to say or how you can say it and stuff like that. So it definitely makes it easier to work in a group setting, I feel. For
sure. And it also like affects the dynamic of our class too, because there's so many different people like in our class. Like we are similar in that way, and then there's a lot of other people in our class who are like that, and then there's the people who aren't. And it's just interesting to me to see how that transforms into leadership roles within class, because we raise our hands, we talk a lot, we ask questions, but it's fascinating. And then I'm just kind of rambling here, but that gets me thinking about like careers, like when we I don't work full time. Do you work full time?
Not during the school year. In the summer I go to full time hours, but I don't part time when I'm in school. So.
And you're a retired veteran, so you had your whole career, but it just makes me think like when we graduate, and if you also are doing, I don't know what path specifically you're going to after you graduate, but the things that we see in the classroom with our personalities and diversity between students, we're going to see that in our career, and it's going to affect our teams there. So we have to be, I guess, mindful, and when we choose different teams, we have to keep in mind that everybody is a little different. We're all going to interact differently. We all have different experiences and backgrounds, and that can certainly change the dynamic of the team, but no matter what, I feel like you can always make it work no matter who you're working with.
And what you just said obviously goes right into our topic, diversity, and I feel like sometimes people get caught up in diversity as just like, race or ethnicity, but diversity to me at least is like being able to involves different kinds of people, different age groups of people, and
different types of experiences.
Right, different types of experiences and stuff like that. And I think it's very important to have, like you said, we're young and we're getting ready to enter the workforce for the first time. When someone like Ryan, he's already had those experiences, and he entered the Marines at a young age. When I feel like most people who get into the military get in when they're younger.
Yeah.
Right, but you went in as a young adult, and then you worked for 20 years, almost 20 years.
15. It was 15, total 15.
Yeah. 15 years to where you kind of you became a father in that time period. You became a husband in that time period and stuff like that. So
very quickly.
Yeah. But me personally, I value people who come from different aspects of life, who have had different experiences than that I have, and then I like to listen to what people say and how they went about those experiences, what they learned from those experiences, and then kind of take that and then use that to make me a better person, make me a better friend, a better brother, a better son, and then eventually a better employee for over the next year as we get into the workforce.
Yeah. So to talk about that, through my military experience, like you're meeting a bunch of people from all walks of life, and you get thrown together on a team or in a group of some kind, whatever it is, and you have to accomplish some kind of goal. The amount of just things I never would have thought on my own, or even like I know no one at home would have thought about this, because you're getting those different experiences, and people can come up with amazing things that you never would have thought. Now you just add it to your toolbox. It's a cliche for sure, but now I'm exposed to that, and now I can use that later on in the future and show somebody else that or whatever else. So you can always learn from everybody around you, and that's a phenomenal thing. And if you don't mind, I was going to ask about this functional area. Part of the diversity list that we were going over was a functional area, and I think Mackenzie was saying that she works with special needs aid. You're a special needs aid, and she also has a background in construction because your father owns a company, correct? Yep. And then you also your functional knowledge is in finance. Do you want to talk to me about that?
Oh, finance? Oh.
Was that wrong?
So I don't have much experience with finance other than with my father. We have created spreadsheets on Excel and I've helped him price out jobs, done biddings for different customers, and it's home improvement. So I have a little bit of experience with that, and that's about the extent of my financial knowledge, which, I mean, it is fair though, because with the Excel spreadsheets with pricing out jobs, there's so many components in construction. Like,
did you teach your dad how to do any of the stronger stuff?
No, I didn't, because he already had, like, my dad's like, he's like uber, like he has so many degrees.
Yeah,
he's very educated, and he knows his Excel stuff. So he does it. He's got this, but yeah, like it's all the different components that you have to think about, and of course, like, you know, you want your profit to be above how much you're spending on the materials. But, and I also just want to touch back on what we were talking about with how other people's experiences can really impact us. Right? I feel like everybody has something different to offer in their personality, their experiences, their knowledge, their wisdom. And it's so important, in my opinion, to be open to that, to be opening to listening, because how can you be a leader if you're not willing to listen to the people that you're trying to help lead?
100%.
Right? You can't just be a dictator, like, oh, this is the way it is. You have to get on their level. You have to understand everybody else, and then.
Would you say that's a form of emotional intelligence?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, because it's not always easy to step into somebody else's shoes and to understand where they're going from. It does play an emotional factor, because sometimes somebody might be upset over something and you have no idea why. But you have to emotionally be able to, like, respond to that and recognize what's going on, and that way you can better move forward with the situation.
So another topic that we wanted to go over is a little bit self-disclosure. So in class we were given three questions to kind of go over or whatever, or reflect on, and give our personal experiences and our the stuff that we've been through. So I mean, I guess I'll start off. One of the questions was, what is the most difficult challenge that you had to overcome? And for me, it was, I guess, started right after COVID, like right after the quarantine was still like procedures, like you still had to wear a mask and all that went into effect. I had one of my best friends from high school. He actually killed himself, committed suicide while he was away at school, and that really had a hard time. I really had a hard time kind of understanding, I guess, lack of understanding of what he went, like why he felt he had to do that, or like why he felt like he didn't have any other options, or like he could have reached out or anything like that to, and not just me either, but he could have reached out to so many other people, and people would have been on his doorstep in a heartbeat. And then so he died in September of 2021, I want to say, September 2021. And then the following April, or I guess that spring, another very close person of mine, he passed away from cancer. Battled with cancer. He was a Marine as well. My girlfriend, it was her sister's boyfriend. I mean, so I had known him before I had met them, but he was a very another close person in my life too. So I lost two people close to me for very different reasons.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a confusing time to me too. So part of my whole thought process was like,
what kind of cancer did he have?
he had Ewing sarcoma. So it's like it's a childhood cancer, but it's a bone cancer. So he was in the Marines. He had just gotten back from deployment. He had been having hip pains, and he's going the Marine Corps just like put him through PT, thinking it was like more like a muscle or like a soft tissue injury. And when he had gotten home from his deployment, it got to the point where he was having a hard time walking. And thankfully, he wouldn't have lived much longer. But thankfully, his parents still had him on their insurance, and he wasn't. They never took him off his insurance, so they had scheduled for him to go get an MRI. And when he gets the MRI, they saw some spots, and they were like, we're gonna do more, like look more into it. And they ended up finding out that he had stage 4 bone cancer. Yeah, so he lived for 3 years with cancer. I mean, he had up and down moments.
Right.
He had times where he was living his normal life. He had times where he was very, very, very sick. But it was just a hard time for me because obviously losing loved ones in general is difficult. But losing two people that you love and that you're very close with for two opposite reasons. Mm-hmm. Like one was fighting and doing everything he could to stay alive and live his life, and then I had another friend that felt like there was nothing else he could do, and then he ended up taking his own life. So that was a difficult time for me.
Yeah. Did it going through that? Did it make you appreciate things differently, or were you angry about stuff? Like, did you go through the whole stage?
Yeah, I mean, I went through periods where I was angry. Angry not just in the fact like, man, like, why did this have to happen, but also like, angry at God because I have my friend Justin who's fighting cancer every day. Like, why take him? Like, I see him fighting so hard, and then like with my friend Brandon, like why, like all you had to do was just come say something to me. Like all you had to do was reach out, hey, like bro, I'm struggling right now. I just wanna, like, I have stuff I want to talk about, but also angry at the fact that self-reflection, like why, like did I not make him feel like he could have come and talked to me?
It wasn't you.
And stuff like that. And over time, I've kind of like, I've realized and like, I can't think like that and stuff like that. But when everything first happens and you're having all those raw emotions and you're still like, just confused and stuff like that. But I mean,
for sure.
Obviously it's something that totally sucks. Like I wish it never happened, but it's all a part of who I am today, and like the lessons I've learned. I learned how to be a better friend, a better boyfriend, a better son, and then just like a better overall person. And it's made me a stronger person as well.
Made you appreciate.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's good, man. But in general.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry to hear about your loss.
Yeah. But.
Yeah. And was it? I don't remember names specifically, but Jack, my boyfriend, went to Tech.
Jack.
So he told me about that, and I can't. There was 2 individuals who committed suicide within that year, and I don't know which one you're referencing. I'm sorry, I don't remember names.
Okay.
However, I remember him saying that one of them was like into sports, and it was him.
Yeah, so
he said that you would never know that this dude.
That's what made it so crazy is because, so my buddy Brandon, we played football together. I played quarterback. He was my left tackle, and so it's like every time this kid walked into a room, it's like he had a huge smile on his face, and he lit up the room, and that's what was so confusing for me too, is because I never saw, like, if you'd have told me that he had been going through those things, or he had been battling like mental health issues, I'd have been like, dude, get out, like, you're crazy. Yeah. Like, he's like the happiest kid I know.
That seems to be. I've also had some friends go along that path too, and it just seems to be normal as far as the people who show the signs are the ones who are looking for help. The people who don't, they're not looking for the help. So people have a hard time rationalizing that. Like, why don't you just reach out? And the answer to it, in my opinion, is they didn't want to, dude.
Yeah.
Which is hard to deal with too, right? But it will help you maybe feel better about it that there was nothing you could have done.
Yeah.
Right. So it is unfortunate. I am sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And going off of that, I feel like a lot of the people who do like seek attention, and it's taken in such a negative connotation a lot of times, seeking attention for mental health.
Right.
Like, I mean, you've seen, I'm sure all of us have seen people like post things that are very depressing, and it's like, a lot of times they get a lot of hate for it, and it's like, dude, like, why are you doing that? But at the same time, I feel like as it is, it's still better than silently suffering to the point where you die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I feel like it's especially for like a male, like for a boy or whatever, it's harder for them because, I mean, I'm not old, but I'm old enough to be be from the generation where you're like, oh, like if a boy cries, he's a sissy or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, oh, you like, not that like me, I wasn't taught to like show emotion or like it's not okay to show emotion and stuff like that. But like just like how life was when we were kids, it's just like, you know, like, oh, like be tough, be a man and stuff like that. And not to say that there's not like that's completely wrong. Like it all depends on the context.
There's a value to it,
yeah.
But there's also a detriment to it.
Yeah, but it's also like, you know, if you like in something that serious, like when you're struggling like mentally and you're like battling depression or having like unhealthy thoughts and stuff like that, then, you know, that's where it is become, you know, more important in just my perspective on it. You know, after having these experiences has changed, you know. And like especially nowadays, like I feel like ever since COVID happened, in general, there's been more of a push on mental health and like people speaking up about it. And maybe it's just a biased thing that I didn't notice it before. But you know, I feel like it's talked about more. Like you see it on commercials and stuff now, and you know that time period, like COVID in general, was a huge like struggle for a lot of people. Because I mean, you have people that work around people all the time, having constant communication, and now you're like locked down in the house almost, and you're not having the same human interactions, and a lot of people don't, like, they're used to a certain routine, and now they're out of the routine and stuff like that. So I mean that not that bothered me as much, but like on our world in general, I feel like that was definitely a harder time for people, like a time when mental health was definitely more of a frequent, like a reoccurring problem with people. But yeah, you know, but I mean, I don't want to say you live and you learn, because I don't want to make it seem like that, but you know, it is something that, you know, if it happens to you and then you lose somebody like two different reasons like that, you know, it does kind of build.
Well, if you think about it in a way to look at it in a good light, is it did perhaps expand your threshold for what you're, you know, you have one particular instance, death, and then you have one extreme to the other. Yeah. And now that you experience both of them in a very short time, hopefully, and it inevitably will, right? Well, we're all going to lose people, but you will be able to be there for somebody who's going to feel it for the first time like you did, because you understand the span in which, you know, the emotion that you felt for both of those, you know, reasons.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
for sure. Yeah.
So that's good.
Life goes on. Like at the end of the day, you have to live and learn, and as frustrating as that can be, I mean, you take what you can from it, and then you can use that, like you're saying, to help somebody else, you know, down the line.
Yeah,
might need it.
sure. Yeah.
Damn, Ryan, we should say that one for later, man, because I don't know how do you move on from that?
Well, I was gonna say, like,
oh God,
it's hard to move on from that topic.
I mean, I can. My challenge that I was going to talk about is a little depressing too, so that's a great transition.
Let's do it, and then we'll talk about this afterwards.
Yeah. So we'll go into this, and then let's go into like our goals or something.
Okay.
So your most difficult challenge that you've overcome, Mackenzie?
So for me, I was struggling with mental health, not to that extent. I've never not to that extent at all. But junior year of high school. So it's been a minute, like 6 years, maybe, something like that. And I was just not having a good time. Like, it was rough, and I will explain. Like, I went to John Carroll, which is a smaller school.
Right.
And it's very cliquey. Yeah. It's very cliquey, and so I had, like, this friend group, you know, thought everybody was my friend. They all were, like, you know, talking crap about me behind my back. Found out they were all basically fake, and I was like, well, that's unfortunate. So
these are people you consider close friends?
Yes, for 3 years.
So your trust is crushed.
So
yeah,
my trust was crushed, and I was just, as a woman going through high school, there's all kinds of hormones too. So that's a huge part of it. Just gonna be blunt about that. Like, every men and women in their teens are going through a lot of hormonal issues, and it affects everything.
Yeah, 100%.
So there's that component as well. But borderline, the bottom of the line is that I was just like mentally exhausted and anxious all the time. Like I was.
You have fear of people talking, like you couldn't relax. Everyone around you is conspiring against you in your mind. Because that's exactly what had happened.
Exactly. So I was just anxious all the time. Like I was too scared to talk to people. I was scared of what I said, and I was just like, and then I would get to the point where I would have panic attacks where I would borderline black out, but I didn't realize it was that, so I kept getting blood tests done because I had no idea what was wrong with me. Like, I would actually, like, I would be conscious, but, like, I would lose my vision and my hearing, and I would feel like I was on fire. I was like, what's going on? Am I dying? Yeah. And I would, like, skip classes a lot, and I was very lucky to, like, be able to maintain, like, straight A's as well, like, during this whole time, but I would just... And that's how I got away with it, because the teachers were like, oh, your grades are good enough, you're fine.
Do you feel like you focused your energy towards school because of the things you were going through?
I've always had a mindset where I focused my energy towards school, just because, like, I went to private school my whole life, and the teachers always drilled it into you, like, oh, if you don't do well, you're gonna fail in life. Like, that's literally, in elementary and middle, that's how it was. So I've always had that mindset of, it doesn't matter, I have to get stuff done, like, whatever. So I try to maintain A's and B's throughout school.
That's good.
But yeah, it wasn't a good time, and I just mentally was going through a period where I was like, I can't stand the anxiousness, so I was trying to block everything out, and then I just hit this rock bottom where I blocked out all my emotions, so I was just numb. And it was worse. It was so much worse because, like, I couldn't even remember, like, who I was. Like, it was not good, and I didn't want to hang out with people, and if I did, it felt fake because I just wasn't myself. I was like, I can't live like this, so I need to climb out of it. Yeah. And so I began, like, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to climb up, because if I didn't hit
100%.
rock bottom, I probably would have just continued dealing with it and struggling. But I was like, no, I need to genuinely, like, make a huge change in my life because I cannot go on like this. So
did anybody prompt this, or was this you figuring yourself out?
This was myself.
No one was like, hey, Mackenzie, you might want to try to...
Because brings me to another point. There was a girl who wasn't in my class of those friends who was, like, there for me during this time at the beginning, but then she was like, I don't feel like hearing this anymore. I'm not talking to you. And she completely, like, cut me off. And I was like, oh, cool. So I was kind of on my own. Yeah. I did have one close friend who was there for me at the time. But I didn't bring my family into it. They would have been there for me, but I didn't want to bring them into it. So I started praying, talking to God, meditating, yoga, and just existing. Like, instead of with anxiety, like, it's all these thoughts in your head, like, swarming. You can't escape them. So I just took time to, like, pray, and then I would sit outside and just exist for, like, an hour. Not on my phone, not on anything, and I would just, like, look into nature and just observe what I hear, what I smell, what I see. And I would just do this, and it was just, like, a therapeutic thing. And, like, with time, I was, like, it took a while, but I still practice all these things. And it took maybe, like, I mean, I guess a long time is all in a matter of opinion, but it took several months, let's just put it that way, before I started to see much progress. But I had to keep in mind, baby steps. You're not going to see everything all at once. Because I had friends at the time in high school who were in a similar boat with the anxiety, and they would just, like, oh, I tried this and it didn't work, and then they gave up. Yes. I wasn't like that.
There's no
I understood that it takes a lot of time, and you might not always see the progress, but then when you look back on it one day, you do see the progress. So, but I don't know.
Can I ask you a question? As far as when you hit your rock bottom, started wanting and pursuing different avenues of progress. Was this after you graduated, so you were removed from the environment, or were you still having to go to school in your senior year maybe, and still seeing the people that had the Trader's routes?
Yeah, so this was my junior year going into senior year, so this was before COVID was a thought. But this was during the summer leading into senior year. So I wasn't around people constantly because it was summer. And I fortunately I basically brought myself out of this and became a very happy person through God and all these practices before school started, like by the time that it started, and I went in there like a totally different like person and totally different mindset. And I mean, ever since then, it's just been a road up. Like, I know that I have the power to continue being happy, because now it's like retraining your brain. The way that I didn't even know.
And to be able to do that, I mean, at a young age.
And on your own.
Yeah, on your own. I mean,
yeah. Because technically our brain's not fully developed till like 28 or something like that.
Yeah.
And you were able to do it like at 17.
My
yourself.
My thing was, like, I didn't want to go onto like Xanax or anxiety medication because I looked at the symptoms and the side effects, and they're known to be addictive, and I didn't want to be just another person who is medicated for the rest of their life. And like, no shame, if you're medicated, that's fine. But I have too many friends who rely on these medications every single day, and they're well in their adulthood. Like, and that's okay. But I just believe that there was a different way. And I was like, I'm not going that route. I will do everything I can to not go the medication route, because and also part of it's diet. Like, I changed my diet, and that helped a lot. But it's just, I didn't want to have that situation.
So it's just funny, just you mentioned it. So any doctor, if you have any kind of, they'll tell you diet and exercise, and the two things people don't want to ever change is diet and exercise. They don't want to move, and they don't want to stop eating or whatever it is. So I just find it interesting that you had mentioned that your diet was changing, plus all the other things that are good for you, which is amazing. And the information is out there on how to do better and be better, you know, and people have to decide whether or not they want to do it or not. And you said, I had enough of this, and started making some changes. I think that's, and you did it
at a young age, like it's in a time where it's, you know, everybody always talks about, you know, high school is supposed to be like one of the happiest, most like fun times of your life, and you know, for you, first off, for you to go through that, and like that kind of be how like your, I don't know if that's how you remember your high school experience, or but like to have that kind of like have those feelings during a time where you're supposed to be really happy and you're supposed to be having all this kind of fun. I mean that's terrible in general, but you know, for you to be able to do what you did, and then have that like self-reflection, and then like give like this, how you know, gave yourself a self-assessment, which I mean we talked about that. I feel like for most of our college careers, I guess you could say here at Towson, is a lot of like self-reflection.
Yes.
You know, self-analysis and stuff like that. So I mean, for you to be able to do that at a young age, and then you know how you say like change your way of living and change your aspect of life. I think that's awesome.
And think about this too. Like you did, like you said, at a very young age. Like you said, you know people who are well into their adulthood. I mean, I know people who are still stuck in whatever they had experienced younger, and for whatever reason, and wrong or right, they are unable to move past that and learn anything new. And so now that you had established a new baseline for yourself, I think that's great, because it's only up from here. Not that there won't be struggle along the way, but that's a level of resiliency you can't teach. Yeah, it's something within you. It's a God-given gift, and you should be proud of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can be given gifts, but it doesn't mean you have to open it. You know what I mean? You open it, so that's good. That's really good.
Yeah. And to touch on what you said, like, I did have a lot of good times in high school.
Yeah.
Like, I was in band. I was in marching band. Oh my gosh, the memories in band were just that was the best thing I did. That was the best decision I made, was to join band.
That's good.
But no, and I appreciate, like, it was, yeah, I'm glad I moved through it, and it was a mental shift, and I feel like part of the issues with it is learning to think differently, because the way I thought for literally my entire life,
it's probably very internally focused.
Very internal, and it's like you can't move past things, and because it's the way I thought, like, I never went to a psychologist, so I don't know for sure if I'm not going to say, oh, I have anxiety disorder, because I don't know for sure, but I would bet $100 right now that they would have diagnosed me with anything like that back then. But I thought like that my entire life, and I didn't know there was another way to think. And then when you do different physical things, it can change your thought process.
Yeah, sure.
That's it. People go a lifetime trying to figure that out right there, and so good for you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, but that's the thing. Like anything worth doing is difficult. Any people commend, or people value things that are difficult, which is why we celebrate it. And if it's easy, everyone would do it, right? So it's commendable what you did for yourself and for your family as you move on the rest of your life.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll be able to help your kids through such a time like that. It's very important.
Yeah. And then another thing, I guess questions that we answered were some of our goals. So I mean,
sorry. Before we get to that, do we want to let you answer your most challenging time?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah.
And that way we all did that, and then we go back.
Right. So I feel like I've got to experience a lot of. We talked about a spectrum, right, the left and the right. So like I mean, the amount of hardship I feel like I've endured versus the amount of high times I've had has been pretty wide. I would say the most challenging or difficult time of my life was probably on the drill field. It's a very demanding job in itself, and it's extremely stressful. Just the work that you're doing, the hours you're putting into it, what it does to your body.
Yeah, the physical and the mental.
Yeah, on all the levels like that. And I went to the drill field coming off of back-to-back deployments to Iraq, so I didn't have any decompression time, which helped make it the most difficult time for me, right? So there was no decompression time. I was not with my unit anymore, with the people I was there with. It was pretty much removed from that, thrown into an environment where you're already at a high level of stress. So things start to come up that you just weren't able to ever work through. Hell, you didn't even realize that you had it. And also my job is to run around and scream and holler at people and find every little thing wrong and then make it a big deal. So whatever you do wrong, like I find and I will destroy your life for it. That's my job, and the whole purpose is to survive in combat. But when you're acting on that all day, every day, to such a high level of adrenaline, and then you imagine like how combat is, and there's a massive adrenaline rush to that too. So not only was I like in an environment that incentivized that feeling, I was encouraged to be that way. You see what I'm saying? And it's just part of the job. It's the nature of the job. But it doesn't make. It makes for a good Marine. It makes for a good drill instructor. It does not make good for a husband.
It's probably definitely a challenge that you had.
Yes.
You know, having to, be that person all day at your job, and then have to come home and then not be that way to your. I mean, like having to have I don't want to say having two different personalities, but like, knowing when to flip the switch and be that, and then when to flip it off, and then
100%. And a lot of people say it's like a switch. To me, everyone's different, right? But to me, it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your personality. Everything you do, you recognize where you are. But like my kid will do something, and I'll just it would just be instantaneous, and it just wasn't healthy for anybody. Yeah. And during that time, so I'm dealing with the deployment stuff. I'm dealing with the job itself. I'm dealing with some family issues. I'm just out like external family. I guess my sister and my parents. I'm having some issues too. So it's just a lot. And then of course my internal family, where I was working a lot. I had been gone. Yeah. Like by the time my son was 3, I missed half of his life already. And I went to drill field. And so my wife was pregnant at the time, and I was, like I said, working. It was worse than being deployed because you were home, but you weren't really home. It's funny because you're just so exhausted. I had pictures coming home, and you're screaming all day, so you can't talk. Everything hurts, and you're trying to eat. But like my daughter, who was a baby, is sitting here, and my son's over here, and like we're trying to eat dinner, and I'm asleep. Like it's the level of exhaustion is unbelievable. Sure. So I would say in all of that, like you go through a lot of struggle. You start to have relationship issues with your spouse. You start to have a relationship with your issues with your coworkers, and then also in that environment, you have a lot of like alpha male type personalities, and so everyone's the biggest dude, right? So you're kind of but even though it's a close knit group for sure, everyone is. Been there, done that, and the best at it. And if everyone's like that, then it makes for competition for sure. Yeah.
How long did it take you to like decompress and transition into like how you are today versus how you were when you were in that?
Like did that happen? Did that occur? Like was there a job change or like a location? Like I know you moved around a lot and stuff like that. So
and like mentally, like to become not always, how you're supposed to be as a drill instructor, not always like getting on people for stuff.
So kind of like you, like everyone hits their rock bottom in a way. So at some point I had to take a look at my life and how things were going. And then like the only common denominator was me. Like I was the only one who was involved in all these aspects of my life and wondering why things are not going the way I wanted to go. And that's when I started to realize like, so that's a part of self-awareness, right? Okay, there must be something I'm doing that's not either appropriate or something I'm doing that's not working well. So self-discovery. So I started recognizing like, okay, I am this way at work. Why? I am this way at home. Why? I don't think I'm doing this, but they're saying that I'm doing this. So how do I put myself in their shoes to see what they're seeing? And that would allow me to have some type of understanding. But this was not an overnight thing. This was like you're saying, it's a practice. It's a thought process that takes a long time. But I would also say, unfortunately, I had other experiences afterwards that kind of started evening me out, I would say. After drift, I went to Afghanistan. After Afghanistan, I decided like this was definitely going to be a career, so you have a different mindset shift in that you start to understand. Like by then, Afghanistan was a difficult deployment only because I had 3 kids at this point. Vices in Iraq, I only had 1 son, he was 3. I now have 3 kids, so the time between the family was more, it was hurtful. Right? And they're also like living life, they're not just babies, they're living life, so they know you're gone. So understanding that. And then at that point, I was in a leadership role where I had to also take care of other people who had some issues that were somewhat related to what I was dealing with. And so in teaching them and mentoring them and learning through the whole process, I was able to do more self-reflection. And then I would say also that once I decided to become an officer, there's a different mindset you have to have as an officer versus enlisted. It's there for a reason. Not that it's better or worse, but it's there for a reason. So that helped kind of enlighten myself. And then the reason why I only did 15 years in the Marine Corps is because I have a benign brain tumor. And so I got sick when we were in Okinawa, Japan for like a month, and I was died twice. And 100%. And so subsequently I went to Walter Reed, and I didn't need brain surgery. I take medication over time, but it crushed my pituitary gland, so I have to take a hormone replacement. I mentioned hormones earlier. So
now is that something that's like something that you were born with, or did
no?
Something happen?
So I asked if it was things we were exposed to or whatever, and no one can ever really give a definite answer. It's not hereditary. No one in my family has that, but it's just something that happens. But if you talk to people at Walter Reed, like, you people are exposed to so much different stuff out there. Yes. Like, there's no telling what could be. But because I almost died twice, and I had that experience with me and my family, and I realized that the Marine Corps isn't life, and that there is other things outside that's more important. And then my transition was definitely a difficult time. So I had all these things to make me a little bit more, and I appreciate you saying that because that's what I try to do, to be a little bit more well-rounded and open-minded. It's the culmination of all these experiences that stretch my lateral limits to like, but that's how you grow, right? So, I'm fine with benign brain tumor. I just take medication every day. I'm dependent on medication, so I can't stay in the Marine Corps, and I was lucky enough to do an early retirement, full military retirement benefits. I got very lucky.
That's so, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. Wow. I mean, what you went through, and you know the struggles that you had to go through and what you had to endure. I mean, that's a lot that.
Yeah.
I would say about like 90% of the human population probably couldn't go through. And part of that,
Thanks.
Part of it is just an attest to you and your your personal makeup, and then some of it is also, to our military and stuff like that. And they, I mean, obviously what you're going through, like, I feel like it's you don't want to ever put somebody through that situation, but the strength that they instill in you guys, and what they train you to become, not just physically but like mentally and stuff like that. It's really is crazy, and God bless anybody that chooses to do that and makes those sacrifices and stuff like that. So
100%. And I think the same thing. Like, I've experienced so much hardship to a certain degree that where else can you find this type of to where you can do this self-discovery piece. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, if you look at just trauma or situations in general, it all has certain similarities regardless of the severity of it, right? It all depends on your particular perspective. So like when you lose trust, like you knew your friends and you thought you knew them in and out, and that happened, right? You had friends who betrayed you, but there's still an element of trust that you had lost. And so there's deep-seated emotional ties to that. And so it doesn't matter the severity. In a way, it can, of course, right? But in general, you can relate to that because it is the same major subject.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, it is pretty cool, like, to see how you are. Like, we only know what we've seen of you in class and like in tunes. No, but like it's so because like you're very like well-rounded individual. Like you're very like you're fun to hang out with and talk to. So it's cool to see that that's how you are, but that's what you've been through, and you've managed to like become who you are today, despite all of those challenges with the Marine Corps and the way of life that you used to live.
Yeah,
so it's cool.
Yeah, very good.
Cool.
On to the good stuff. Talk
Yeah.
about our goals,
so now,
right?
Yeah, so I was gonna say
Our achievements we're proud of.
So we're halfway through. So you guys want to go over goals? We can go into like our experiences with leadership. Whatever. I'm game for whatever you guys want to go through.
Yeah. Why don't we just briefly touch on?
Okay, so we'll just go. Okay.
Just briefly.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off. So we each identified 3 goals that we hope to achieve. My 3 goals were first one was I want to make a positive change and impacts in people's lives. Part of that's from what I've from the struggles that I've gone through and the experiences that I've had. And
right.
I don't want anybody. My feelings is that I don't want anybody to feel like they're not worth living, or they're not loved, or they don't matter. So that's kind of my motivation by having a positive impact in people's lives. Every day I try to wake up. What can I do to make somebody else's day? It could be as simple as holding the door for somebody, walking through, walking by somebody and saying, hey, like, hi, how are you? How are you doing? Stuff like that. So, like, I want to try and touch other people, which is why I coach now, why I get into coaching. I was very lucky and very blessed that my whole childhood and my whole like high school sports career, I had great coaches, I had great role models, and part of me giving back is I want to be to the kids nowadays and the kids I coach. I want to be to them what my coaches were to me.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
So that's just one goal of mine.
Leading by example.
Exactly.
Yeah, another goal of mine. I want to be a businessman. I want to have multiple sources of income.
That's right.
So, whether you have your main job, whatever that may be, whatever I get into or whatever, but I also want to. I'm interested in getting into real estate, as in like owning property, renting out, commercial and residential properties and stuff like that. Having another source of income. And then my third goal is I want to retire by 55.
I think you do by 45.
I hope. Hey, that would be even better.
Yeah.
And everybody, like older people I talk to, and they, you talk about your retirement and get into 401ks and stuff like that. I've always had people tell me like, man, I wish I would have started earlier. I wish I would have started planning for retirement earlier. And then I watch different videos and listen to different podcasts and stuff about like these financial advisors or these smart business people that talk about if you start young, like the more inclined you are and the more likely you will be to retire at a young age, because everybody works for different reasons, but nobody wakes up and is like, oh, I want to work the rest of my life. Like just me personally, I feel like there's so much in life that I want to see, just like within traveling. There's so many experiences that I want to have. And then part of it, I guess another goal is how I can combine that with work.
Yes.
So like figuring out a way to do that, but having a goal of retiring by 55 is definitely a goal of mine, just for the life that I want to live, the things that I want to do, plans I have. But
have you started any have you started?
Yeah, so I do have a 401k.
Yeah.
Good.
I have one with my company now, and
because Mackenzie, she was recently playing around, figured through your own IRA.
Yeah.
I have a mutual fund, a couple mutual funds running.
Yeah. So I do have a 401k, and I certain amount of my paycheck every week or every 2 weeks goes to that, but that is a goal of mine, and I feel we don't have to get into all the kind of finances, but I do have like a good understanding of like budgeting and stuff like that. So I definitely feel like I should be able to achieve that goal. And obviously there's stuff that there's disasters and like stuff that comes up where that may happen, but I mean that's life and stuff like that. But
100%.
Yeah.
Do you feel like any of the leadership classes here at Tune have like helped you with your goal of like creating a separate business to help with your income? And like, do you think that maybe anything that you've learned at Tune has influenced how you say you want to like lead the people? That because you were it sounds like you were kind of inspired by the way that you were led by certain people, so you want to like transform and help others. But do you see like any connections, like any specifics that you can think about?
So there's different things, like different resources we've been exposed to, or like for example, like like Sharma's class, like through all those Excel classes, he had all those different Excel files where it helped you kind of like it would compute stuff out for you. And like there was one that I actually saved. It's like a personal, I guess, financial sheet or whatever, where where it can compute your yearly salary, how much you should save, and stuff like that. So I mean that's like a resource that's been helpful. But like some of our different our leadership classes, all the like the self reflections we do, having a better understanding of my personality and what my my values and stuff are, like all that's been very helpful. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
How about you guys, your goals or whatever?
For me, so I'm gonna jump off of the experience before I touch on the goals. For me, the most like the class we had with Jan Baum.
Yeah, that was a great class too.
I love that class.
Yeah,
that class we had to create a fake bike company, and we all had to compete against each other, but we were in the same group and
killed it too.
we came out on top. We actually did. But no, that was my favorite experience I've ever had in a school setting, because the entire class was a game. There were no like, oh, do this assignment. It was no, this is this, and it was very like we learned a lot.
And it was like a business like real world situation.
Yes.
Where
some reactionary type stuff we had to do. There's some planning involved. Yeah, it was really good.
And it made you think about things that you wouldn't normally think about, but in a business setting, they're really important. And it was such a great experience. But going on to my 3 goals, my goals are generally my first goal is to help other people improve their outlook on life, look at the bright side of things. Like I was saying about the hardest time I went through, I just want to be able to help people. And that goes into like the achievement I'm most proud of. Like whenever I'm able to help somebody like break through a mental block and just help them see things in a different light. Because like for me, that totally changed my life, like being able to see things differently. So that's really important. Another one of my goals is going off of that is to help people who are misunderstood. So like children, for instance, I've worked with children. I currently volunteer with children. And you just, sometimes kids aren't born evil. Kids are born with love in their hearts, and they're not born bad kids, but...
You haven't been my 4-year-old.
But like, I feel like they turn into, sometimes kids get very snappy or whatever, and I think that it's just because sometimes they're misunderstood. Maybe they didn't mean to do the thing that they did that was bad. Maybe they didn't know that it was unacceptable to behave in that way. Instead of yelling them and punishing them and be like, why'd you do that? You stink. We should be like, you did this. This is the consequence of your action. This is why it's not acceptable. Here's a better way to approach it next time. And I feel like that's so important. Because people need to be heard, and that totally, like, the way that we raise kids, they're going to be the leaders of our next generation, so it's really important, which goes into one of our podcast and article discussion, but we'll get into that in a minute. And then the last goal of mine is to have a healthy lifestyle that balances with my career. I don't want to be overworked and not, because I go crazy if I'm like, I worked full-time a year ago. Well, not actually, yeah. I basically worked full-time and I was a full-time student. And it was okay until until my schoolwork really picked up, and then I just could not function, like, at all. And I go crazy. So a huge goal for me. I need to be able to, like, have my personal time to, like, hang out with people, do exercise, not always be thinking about schoolwork.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, so my 3 goals I hope to achieve is 1, to get our degree here next semester, and this first and foremost, I suppose. But along the same lines of what you guys said, you want to be able to help people. You went through your experience, whichever one it may have been, or multiple, and you want to find a way to maybe help people not have such a difficult time going through the same type of thing. And I'm in the same boat. What I would like to do is start my own consulting business, focusing on initially just leadership development for small companies, really, like small business. Somewhere between like 3 to 5 years, people are just kind of, trying to transition their business from them doing the operations to now training people to do so. Another major goal is just kind of like you were saying, staying healthy, like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but not just for myself, but for my family. I do have like I guess a patriarchic idea of what my family is, and for some people agree, some people don't. But I think that it's important to be a leader, especially as a father within the family, and I think that it's been bearing fruit so far. I have great kids who are well-rounded and have goals and desires, and they're staying away from dumb things, which I'm proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just me alone; it's me and my wife. My wife's amazing as well. And so, I want to be able to maintain it with my family, especially as they start entering new stages of life, which will always create some new challenge, I'm sure. But I definitely want to maintain my family unit. And then, I don't know what kind of music everybody likes, but I like all kinds.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Right, but nowadays I find myself listening to more country. But Tim McGraw has a song out now, "Live a Life."
Yeah.
Something I think it might be called that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I heard that and I'm like, that's perfect. Like that's exactly, to me, like it's not that I care about other people's opinions. I just know that I want to be of value and useful to people.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned a thing or two that I might be able to share in hopes that it helps other people. So the idea of living a life worth living. And living a life that's worth other people remembering is important to me, and for whatever reason, I value that. So that's my goal. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
So I guess next time we get into is our topic being leadership, and I guess just we can go each individually, and then we'll go our thoughts on what leadership should be and what it looks like, and then also some experiences that we've had with it, whether then they be good or bad. So for me, I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
Leader to me, there's different kinds of leaders. Like there's vocal leaders, people that lead by example and stuff like that. But I think the whole goal for like an overall leader is to kind of understanding people and understanding how to communicate and approach different people, because no two people are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their things that motivate them, things that set them off, and I think it's the goal of a leader to understand and figure out how you can talk to people, communicate with people, motivate them and stuff like that. But like to me, like a leader, there's like a fine line of like the authoritative part of it, like kind of like managing, and then have like organizing, telling people what to do, but also like I don't want to say like be their friend, because not all leaders have to be your friends, but there has to be
at least be approachable.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of like personal connection or like personal understanding of one another. Like I don't feel like you can lead somebody if you don't have a simple understanding of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my what I think a leader should be, or what a leader looks like. So if you guys want to get into
Yeah, I right on what you were saying, and kind of how I was explaining earlier. Like, to be a leader, you need to get on everybody else's level, understand what they're going through, and like be their friend if you need to. But I think that you can be a friend and be a leader in every circumstance, as long as the other person also wants to be have that kind of relationship, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not a parent yet, but there's the whole saying of like, oh, you can't be your kid's friends and your kid's parent at the same time. I don't know what you think about that, and I would love to hear your opinion.
Okay.
But For me, I feel like there's a difference, like honestly, I think that depends on how you see a friend too.
Yeah.
Because if a true friend isn't gonna cheer you on to do bad things, a true friend is gonna tell you when you're messing up, when you're hurting them. They're gonna help you become the best version of yourself that you can be. And in my opinion, that's what a leader should do, and that's what a parent should do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with like a leader should bring out the best in people, and like know how to bring out the best in people. So I do agree with that.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah. So leadership to me is very important. There's different levels of it for sure. So like you want someone initially to be able to lead by example and do the things that they're asking you to do. It's very difficult to respect anybody who is telling you to do something, but you know they've never done it or not willing to do it with you. So that's one aspect. The next aspect is like being a man with a plan. Like if you are able to, based off your experience, you understand how things are going to work out, you can then kind of plan things out. People will, especially people who've never experienced it, will appreciate that you have at least some idea of what the hell's going on, and then you can move forward, right? So those are kind of like the lower levels of it, but always being, leading by example is very important. And then another thing is like when on a small team or a large team, regardless, of like create that team mindset is always important. I do that with my family. Like we do things as a family. The worst thing you can do is individualize things. Yeah. Like people are an individual, but that's when you had like this transformational type leadership idea where people are saying something to a group of people and cultivating this one particular type of mindset towards it, like a goal, right? For like an organizational goal. So that's another level of leadership that's way up there. So it's all these different facets. It depends on which level you're talking about and to be able to be good at all of it is very difficult, but depending on what level you're talking about. With parents, and here's a so you were mentioning about children. You have to, because you have to take it up their authoritative position. They're children. There's plenty that they know and don't know, and it's your job to protect them to a certain point. So, especially when they're younger, they don't know anything. So a lot of times, like you're going to tell them no, and they're not going to like it. Now, should you tell them yes just so they love you? They're going to love you either way. Because what's going to happen is it's nothing that's like a quick fix, not a one-time thing. It's what you do over time. I might yell at my kid because he's about to touch the stove, but I'm still going to kiss him, put him in the bed at night. I'm going to make sure he brushes his teeth. I'm going to pack his lunch. I'm going to play with him. I want to yell at him for hitting his sister. And he's going to know all these things. Over time, people will be able to see right through you because you're consistent on the things that you do over time. I think any good leader would have to be, and this is why it's important, and they talk about this in the podcast, is that it has to be, and you have to find a way if it's not normal for you, you have to make it a part of you, because then it's consistent. Yeah, because then it's actual it's like very genuine, right? Like you can tell when somebody is doing the one thing that a leader's supposed to be the one time, and he doesn't ever do it again. You know it's not genuine. But if you spend enough time around people who consistently do the same type of thing over and over again, you will realize that he's kind of a jerk, but he means well, and you can appreciate that. Or like I know that I'm going to go do this because he asked me to, because I've seen him do it 15 times before. You see what I'm saying? Like, and those things are important. And you'll hear about it a lot of times. Like a lot of older leaders will tell people what to do, and the younger generation won't appreciate it because they haven't seen them do it. And they're like, well, I already did it. I already did my time. Is that going to, if I was to tell you I've already done my time, that doesn't mean I need to do it. Are you going to respect that? It might be true, right? I might have already done it. I've already done my time. But you don't know that. You haven't seen it. So even though it's true, you're not going to appreciate that. If I get down in that hole with you, start digging. So a lot of times as a leader, you have to understand the burden of leadership and have to understand how you, being self-aware, how you come off to other people. It's very important because you might be doing all the right things, but if they're perceiving you a certain way, you have to be aware of that, and you have to be able to address that and gain the trust of your people. Even though like they don't know you're sitting there writing reports all day long. They don't know that you're busy. But as a leader, when you get up out of the desk, walk yourself down to the floor or wherever it is, and go spend time. Put that in your schedule, because as you get in positions, you're gonna start to realize how busy your schedule is. But schedule that time to go down there with them to see what they're doing, ask them questions, just jump in there. Now, and if you feel like you're getting in the way, get the hell out of the way, right? But but show them that you're there. You have to do that.
To that point, dude, you just said, part of a leader too, like you said, when to get in the way and then when to get the hell out of the way. I think that's also important too, because as a leader, as a manager, and we've talked about this in class, it's not like majority of the time you're not the one doing the work. You're managing the people who are doing the work. So there's times where you need to get involved, and if they're getting off track or stuck or have faced a block in the road, that you need to get involved and kind of figure out how to get them on the right track. But if they're moving like a well-oiled machine and they got an understanding of what's going on, then that's also important to know when to step back and take a back seat and let your team work.
And the only sorry.
I think that it's important to let people have that autonomy too, because as somebody who's working under somebody, you don't want to feel like you're constantly being watched and that you have no choice in your actions, that you have no creative freedom. So as a leader, it's a matter of helping them along the process, giving them the tools they need to succeed, and then giving them that freedom to be an individual and have that autonomy.
Yeah. And so all these different leadership concepts are not just one thing and that's who you are and that's it. It's learning when to use these different techniques, if you will. And sometimes they're not even techniques, they're just things you do. But to go back to what you're saying, micromanaging, right? So micromanaging comes from two things. One, a lack of trust in your abilities, and two, a lack of trust in my abilities, right? Sure. So when I first left the drill field, I was with a captain who was very micromanaging. I didn't understand why, and it drove me crazy. And what I learned is once I was able to address all the little things that he wanted and he needed, because he needed it. He was in a position that he didn't understand it either, so he was relying on me. So he asked all these questions, one, because he didn't know, but two, because he knew that he was going to get in a whole lot of trouble if things didn't go a certain way. So he put that pressure on me in turn. For better or worse, what happened through that process is I learned that if I'm able to provide him, as me being his subordinate, if I'm able to provide him the answers he wants, and I understand the type of question he continues to bring, I now know how he thinks, and therefore I can just do those things. And then once I start doing those things and answering them right off the bat without having to second guess it, he then trusts me. And then what happens is it builds autonomy, right? So now I'm able to make decisions because I understand what his baseline initiative is, and I can create it on my own. And once I was able to do that, I realized the importance of there's two things. One, they don't trust me, and it's not because not because he's being mean. He just doesn't know me. I was brand new to him. He was brand new to me. But trust is so very, very important when it comes to a relationship within, and if you're a leader, right? So if you find yourself micromanaging, chances are you don't trust them, and so that's when you have to, as a leader, you have to give room to your subordinates, room to fail. Give them something, as long as it's not a pressing issue. Give them and let them figure it out. You don't need to hand them the answer all the time. You don't need to just let them fail, as long as it's not a mission detriment. Just let them fail, and they'll learn from that. You'll learn from that, and then you just kind of work from it. And you're not gonna have the answers either. You're not gonna know everything, but through that process, you'll see what they're capable or not capable of doing. And it's honestly, you can learn all about it in school. And there's concepts for sure, but when you put it in action, when you actually go to work, you'll start to see this stuff. And now that you know about it, you'll be like, oh yeah, we learned about it in school. If you're just going through the experience, you just learn. And now, luckily for me, I have things to tie my experience to. But yeah, I'm just saying, leadership wise, that's one of the biggest things, micromanaging, and it just comes from also an ego thing, oh, I know how to do this, let me tell you how to do this, and that's one of the first step in someone who's just becoming a leader is they have to assert themselves in that way. They'll learn. They'll give them time. They'll learn not to do that.
I think that's a great point with what you were saying about how you have to give them room to fail, because that builds on the trust, and people make mistakes, but it's also important to recognize that everybody handles situations in their own way. Not everybody's going to do things the same way, and you have to understand that as a leader, you have to allow these people to do it the way that they're going to do it.
Yeah. So it looks like we got about 20 minutes left.
Yes, so we should jump topics.
I was going to say, so I guess we can go ahead and get into our podcast and our articles. So if there's, I guess I'll start. You guys have anything that that stuck out to you? with the podcast or the article?
Yeah, I'll talk about the podcast real quick. I really appreciated the podcast because it was a guy who was at the end of his career, his 35-year career in the business world. He talked about how he was a particular way, and he was very energetic, and he was achievement driven, and how he didn't mind like destroying people along the way. And he learned from that experience, and he's kind of reflecting back saying, hey, look, that's not how to be. Like, you can get results, but you're ultimately a cancer to your organization which you're involved in, because that's only going to get you so far. So he spent a lot of time about self-reflection and the human interaction. He talked a lot about that, and it was interesting to see like this bigger picture reflection back. Me being at the end of my career, I can appreciate that aspect. But also, like, he spent 35 years in the business world, so I just thought that was great. Like, so that was my takeaway from it. That just the overarching view back on his career and essentially being self-aware is what he was saying.
That's one of the similar takeaway that I had is, how he was like in the beginning of his career, how he was a certain way, and then how he was able to self-reflect and then look back and say, I was wrong. And that takes a lot as in a person in general, just to be able to admit that you were wrong and that you went about something.
You call himself a destructive hero.
Yeah.
I thought that was so interesting, that part.
But to be able to reflect on yourself and admit that you were wrong. And, that does, as we were, our topic is leadership, I feel like that does make you good leaders, to be able to admit when you're wrong or when you act out of character. Because, as somebody, if I'm like working for somebody or somebody's, is an authoritative figure to me, we may get into a confrontation or a conflict or something like that, which is fine. That happens. It's people. We're people. It's human beings. It's just how life works. But, it means more to me if you can come to me and say, hey, like, I apologize, I was wrong. And, have that adult conversation with me, than if you, if we were to get in that conflict or whatever, and then you just blow it off and act like it didn't even happen. Like, that means more to me, and I would respect you as a leader more if you were able to come to me and you say, hey, like,
it's a sign of emotional intelligence too, right?
Yeah.
I might have done something. I might not even think I was wrong, but I know that it affected you negatively.
Yeah.
So I might not, hey, I'm sorry I messed this up, but hey, I'm sorry that this happened, and that's how you took it. And both ways, it's very important to, one, recognize when you messed up, but also recognize, even though you felt like you didn't mess up, to recognize that it did affect somebody else in a way that you should apologize for.
Yeah.
So emotional intelligence to that aspect is important.
Do you have anything that you want to?
Yeah, so I think that it's very, like you were saying, very valuable to recognize when you've made mistakes, because how can you learn unless you do that and own up to it? And on the podcast, I thought it was fascinating that he talked about himself as a destructive hero, and how sometimes you might think that you're doing everything you can to better an organization, but in reality, you're tearing it down. And it's hard to recognize that when you're in the midst of it. But you have, it's that reflection, and it's not being in your head, it's being aware of, like, take a minute, or more than a minute, but take some time to step back and look at the big picture. And that's how you can kind of maybe start to figure that out. Even ask people for their opinions on your leadership, how you're doing, ask for feedback. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting was that he mentioned about how it's important to be transparent as a leader.
Yes.
And like you were saying, like, it's about being honest when you make a mistake.
You talk about vulnerability, right?
Yes, vulnerability. It's about being yourself and being real, because people, at the end of the day, we're people. We're not robots. You might be managing an organization, you might need to hit numbers and whatnot, but you are managing people, and we all want that connection. So if you're not transparent in yourself and vulnerable, people aren't going to respect you as much, people aren't going to connect with you, and they're probably not going to want to do what you want them to do as much. But I would like to jump to the articles, if that's okay, since we have almost a little over 15 minutes left. So, on to the articles.
We're making great time. This is perfect.
Yeah. So, the first article, America's Greatest Hope, Young Leaders, that was about, David Gergen wrote that. He used to work in the White House, and he was basically talking about how it's so important for young leaders to come out and, lead this nation in any organization. And I think that he had some very valid opinions in there. He was saying how this most of our country and different organizations are ran by elder people. And in reality, it should be the younger generations in charge, but the older people giving them wisdom and giving them feedback and guiding them. And I really value that opinion. I thought that was a unique way to look at it. And the dilemma is it's going to be the older people in charge a lot of times because they're the ones with the most experience, right? So they're the ones who they earn their right to be that leader. But this man works for the government, or he did work for the government. So he's looking at it from, like, I mean, look at the Senate and Congress, and, you know, we got a lot of, you don't leave until you die, you know? Yeah. But in one respect, it's like, yes, you earned your spot there, you have the most experience, but in the other aspect, it's like, give the younger generation the opportunity to lead this country because they're the ones who are going to see the effects. It's going to be their kids. It's going to be their lives that are affected. Yeah. But that's not to say that they shouldn't have mentors from elder generations. And I don't know, I think that that's something I don't have any say in the way that the government works, but I think that's something that they could implement.
It's like, to your point, no, just my personal opinion, I feel like the politicians and the leaders of our country right now, they're too old, right? And once you get to a certain age, right, I feel like there's not as much you can take on mentally. And like you look at some of the, some of our people who are in positions of leadership now, it's just, there's so much, like how many times you see like a video of somebody and they get off topic, or it's just like during an interview or something like that, and it's just like, man, like what the hell is this dude doing right now? And so I do think there needs to be some sort of policy or rules set in place for age limit of when you can be in that position of leadership, because once you reach like a certain age and you start losing a little bit mentally, and that's just how that's just how life works. But there also is like. So like for president, I think it's like 35. You can't be like younger than 35 to run, which I think that's a good age. That's a point in your life where you're probably established. Like you've had time to get into your career, and that's when a lot of people like get into like a leadership role and stuff like that. But like when you think about like the face of a company or the face of like a country or something, you want somebody who's strong, right? Not just strong physically, but strong mentally as well. And then you have this like picture, like you have this picture painted of what they should look like, or how they should act, how they should speak. And if you see somebody you have somebody up there you're like, man, like this dude, it's just.
You want somebody who can instill some type of confidence.
Yeah.
And not everyone's perfect at everything, but at least some facet in which you're looking for. And you might feel like you're not finding it. I think to the generational gap of leadership, I think it's important that the young people do take leadership roles. And I think that it is important to have a mentor along the way. And that we probably should, especially in government, start doing something different as far as like bringing in new people. The problem is one, there'll be a vacuum, right? There'll be the people who are going to pass as they get older, and there's going to be a whole issue of leadership because of things. But here's another two. Education is very important, and I'm talking about like life lessons learned in different aspects of across history, right? And unfortunately, we are not being. The education at this point is biased, right? So we will inevitably make the same mistakes we always have, as human beings have always have, just because. That's human nature.
Yeah.
So we hold on to these old people because we want some of this older leadership mindset and different experiences. We want the new generation to step in. New generation doesn't understand what the old people do, and then it's just a cycle.
Vice versa.
And it's never going to change. Like even right before World War II started, that older generation at that time did not think that the greatest generation was going to be able to step up and take care of business, and they did, and they're the greatest generation because of it, right? But they didn't think it was possible. So. It's almost like a moot point, really. If you think that history repeats itself, we're gonna have a problem with leadership and all sorts of stuff until something crazy happens and people want to step up and we'll make things happen.
Absolutely.
But he's not wrong. Younger people need to start taking more initiative and jumping in there and just figuring some stuff out. And older people need to pass the baton, 100%.
And our second article was about how leadership can form in college and taking on leadership roles in different organizations and clubs, which kind of goes on to like motivating younger people to become leaders, because I mean, we're young, you know. A lot of us in college are just out of high school. Like, not all of us, but a lot of us are.
I mean, but when you think of it, majority of high school, you know, students are between like 18 and like 22, 23 years old. Yeah. So I mean, in some ways, you know, most people are still living at home, like depend on their parents and stuff like that. So they haven't really had those experiences of like, you know, yeah, we're adults, but we're not like.
Yeah, so I used to always say age doesn't mean nothing to me.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're 18 or 30, it doesn't matter to me. I've seen 30-year-old men cry and break down. I've seen 18-year-old men outperform 100%. So age doesn't mean nothing to me. It's just whatever you're able to do. But this article is talking about just having different exposure. How I can sum it up is talking about exposing yourself to other different people, different missions, if you will, different job. And then using those what you would call soft skills that you put on a resume to go find gainful employment, and therefore you'll be more, you know, you'll be able to start a career this way. And it's just like anything else, like get outside your comfort zone. If you're comfortable just going to your math class, well, go to a freaking, I don't know, psychology class. I don't know. But if you're used to being in a 4-H, well, go to a car show, you know, whatever it may be. If just as long as you're exposing yourself to other people's ideas, thoughts, and processes, you learn more as you go about life, and you'll be more, you know, of an asset wherever you go afterwards.
And I think, like, for me, I see how that article makes sense, because we go to Tune, so we're a little bit isolated from main campus activities.
Which
Go
ahead.
I live right in between Tune and main campus. I go on main campus sometimes, not for classes. I have taken one, but I do club gymnastics through main campus, which we practice in Timonium. I go to main campus for physical therapy. I've gone there for different things. I'm going to go rock climbing there. But my point is, I'm in a couple different clubs. Tune only has a couple clubs. None of them are athletic. I was like, I want to do an athletic thing too. But I am in the non-athletic club, one of them, non-athletic club here at Tune. And I just noticed that, like, the people who are in clubs, whether it's at Tune or at main campus, they're a little, like, different than the people who I have noticed here who don't do anything. Like, they just kind of go to class, go to work, and that's it. And they don't really get involved.
They're a robot.
It's almost like, and then I've had experiences where I've, like, been like, hey, do you want to do this? And it's like, no, I think I'm just gonna, like, go home and study and go to sleep. And, like, that's fine. That's fine. But, like, the people who do involve themselves in clubs, I just noticed that they're more open-minded to experiences, and they're more social, they're more positive, and this is just my experience, right?
100%.
But no, it's cool. Like, and I've just kind of, personally, it's made me more open. Like, I started with one club, and then I joined gymnastics, and now I'm a safety and facility officer at gymnastics. Like, I have a leadership role there. It's just cool how things can transpire, and, like, you start one thing and then you can get into the other.
Absolutely.
So obviously we're running out of time, so I guess we can get into the brainstorming of our game idea.
Okay.
I mean, unless you guys have something else you want to touch on.
Well, it sounded like you had something you wanted to say.
I know. I was just gonna say, you know, people, just in my opinion, like people who do participate in these, like the clubs or like these extracurricular activities or like assert themselves, tend to be like the more like successful people. Like, just my opinion, like tend to be more successful people, and not just in terms of, you know, how much money you make or something like that, but
achievement.
Yeah, achievements or like family or like, you know, just like how happy a person is and stuff like that.
There's a reason why they have the books, you know. There's a reason why, like, they tell you, hey, here's what you do, and if you just, it's there for you.
Yeah.
So then you have to ask yourself, it's not a lack of education at this point. It's just a natural, God-given desire, right? So, like, what made you want to, you know, help people?
Yeah.
Your experience, yes, but like, there's so many people who aren't like that, and it's difficult. It is.
It's also like sparking something, because I feel like there's sides of, like, every person has the capability to not want to get involved, and every person has the capability to, and it's just a matter of sparking that.
Yeah, finding something that makes them move. Yeah, yeah.
But on to the game.
Yeah, so obviously we've had our conversations about, you know, ideas we've thrown around for our you know, our game that we'll come up with for the next project or whatever. But you know, is there something that you guys, like, you're sold on, like, you're, oh man, like, you, or that you feel that we should, you know, look into or get into?
I'm not sold on anything, But we were talking a little bit before the podcast about different ideas we might have, like with a card game maybe, or like some sort of board game where we're acting out a scenario. So like, for example, a card game where we were talking about how you could, like Ryan mentioned, this one card game and and how we could change that game to create like, oh, one person is the business person, one person is the manager, and then one person is like the customer. And then how Ryan was saying, we could have charades, like where we could act it out, and like your card could be your role, and then you get a grade. Ryan was saying like you get a grade based on how well you act, and then that is like I guess the customer or the employee would be the one grading, and then that determines how you excel in the game, and then you can win or lose.
So the way I thought about it kind of relates to what we talked earlier in the podcast, where we were talking, about what classes like we thought were the best, or like what we enjoyed so like the most out of like the class we've taken at Tune.
Right.
And we talked about how Jan's class, I was it entrepreneurship? That was entrepreneurship class. How we were kind of put into like a real world, a real world setting where we had to make our own decisions and make our have our own actions. So
there was like a cost.
And obviously we're a business major, so like we're learning about business, and obviously this is a game too. But you want to have some sort of like something where you can maybe practice a situation or learn from a situation that you're in within business. So that's why I thought of the the charades idea of you pull a card and then you're given a scenario and then you either act out what your reaction would be in that scenario, or
kind of like the damn when we were on the phone and we were role playing the the guy looking for a raise.
Yes, for the
What
was that online?
That was for this class.
Yeah, it was for this class.
Was it for this class?
It was for this
class.
Yeah.
It was one of the
online assignment. I don't remember which one it was.
Maybe?
8 or
Seven.
Seven?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But like something like that, to where where you're given a situation, and you act out or you perform, whatever you want to call it, and then you're given a score, and then whoever has the most points at the end of the round, or once you get through the deck of cards, whoever wins.
And we could even like have like a baby-sized board game version of it, where like you have the cards and that's what you do, and you can get like a score like 1, 2, or 3, and that determines how many you move up.
Yeah.
And then you go like I don't know, maybe 5, 10 rounds or whatever, and then whoever gets to the finish line first wins.
Or you could have like
I like that too.
a spinner in the how you like spin
Spinner?
something.
Yeah.
And then it lands on a topic, and so you have 5 cards for each topic, however many topics you have, and then you pick a card from that topic, and then you have to act that out.
I like that.
So.
And then you could do the point thing. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we have somewhat of an idea of
That's a good idea.
We got the gears turning. I like where this is going.
So definitely have an idea of where we're at now.
2 minutes before we're done, man. 2 minutes.
Say,
what is your final thoughts?
I'll just say, first off, I enjoyed this a lot.
It was a good
Like, this was cool. Like, not only to communicate with you guys, but also like reflect on the different experiences and the different things that we've been through as individuals and how it relates to each other. But so I thought that was really cool. Definitely, I think one of the cooler assignments that I've done like throughout my college experience.
Yeah.
So I definitely enjoyed it, and then Professor Flores, I recommend that you keep doing it, because I had a great experience with it, and then hopefully
100%.
maybe we'll have something like later on down the line that we run into where we have something similar.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Like, I really enjoy this. I like the unique types of projects and assignments where they're out of the box. It's not just like, oh, answer questions, do a paper, papers are fine, but you know what I mean? Like, I like creative assignments like this, and it allows us to learn about each other. And like we were saying with leadership, it all ties into learning from different people, learning from different experiences. And I feel like just this podcast alone can help us all as leaders as we go into school and our career. So I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I like it. I got a couple seconds. So I would just say, be the leader that you want to follow, right? As long as you're able to be that person who you look up to, like Ryan has examples in his life he's trying to emulate. I think if you're going that direction, you're going in the right direction. So just be the leader you want to follow and keep trying to learn. Always learn. You don't know everything. I don't know everything. They don't know everything.
Yeah.
Professor Flores doesn't know everything.
Well,
I wonder if you stuck around for the last 1 hour and 29 minutes.
I'm sure he
Hope
did.
you hung in there, sir. I got 20 more seconds to talk. Oh God!
Salutations, Professor Flores.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We had a good
Thank
time.
you for listening.